Hello YouTube! Today we're going to be talking about power building. But before we get into this, you might have noticed that there is a new addition to the setup, and that is a mic. I've heard you loud and clear, the audio of the phone is not the best, especially if you have to listen to it for hours because my videos are very long. So I tried to set up something that would be better for your ears. What I want from you is this. Let me know what you think. Do you think this is an improvement? If you like it better, I see absolutely no issue with recording almost every single video with the mic. That way, you're not going to be completely disgusted by the audio every time you click one of my videos, and I can make even longer videos in the future because I know it's going to be pleasurable to you. So in the comments, you guys let me know and let us get started with today's topic. So power building is something that I've mentioned many times on this channel, and you might know that I am not an advocate of this method at all. Today, I thought it would be a good idea to take my time and explain to you exactly why. So for those of you who don't know what power building is, here is a simple definition. Power building is a blend of the three main powerlifting lifts: squat, bench press, and deadlift, combined with bodybuilding accessories and volume. Basically, it means starting a workout with heavy weights and few reps to build up your strength, then moving on to lighter weights with more reps to help encourage muscle growth. And based on this definition, it seems quite reasonable, right? There's nothing that stares at you in the face and makes you believe that this system is going to be a complete failure. So on paper, this should work. It should be a system that allows both for strength gains and size gains at the same time, which is of course possible and desirable. This is how you're supposed to want to train. So at face value, this is okay. But if you look beyond the definition and beyond the theory, you'll see that trying to apply this definition in practice is actually impossible. And this is the reason why I say that power building is an abomination. It's because it goes against everything logical. It is counter nature. And because it is counter nature, it usually fails to deliver on both of the fronts it promises to help you develop, both strength and size. So today we're going to delve into it, and I'm going to explain to you exactly why that is the case. Not to discourage you to train for strength or even to follow power building, but just to allow you to reflect on the method that you're following and avoid the most common mistakes that people commit when they try to apply this training style. So the first thing and the first issue in reality with power building is its backbone. As the definition states, the backbone of a power building program is going to be the big three. So the bench, squat, and the deadlift is going to be the main meal, if you will. It's going to be what makes up the majority of what you're going to be doing in the gym. And that is because there is a power portion in power building, and that power portion comes from power lifting. So you're not just training for strength. Power building is not just training for general strength. You're training for a very specific type of strength on very specific lifts. And on top of that, the type of strength you're trying to develop on these lifts is one rep max strength, which is also only one kind of strength. So we see that already power building restricts your ability to train quite a lot. And that is questionable, in my opinion, because if you're going to want to mix size and strength, what makes powerlifting a good choice as opposed to other strength sports? For example, why is no one doing weight building, weightlifting, and bodybuilding? I think it could work quite well. Why is no one doing strong building, strongman, and bodybuilding? I think that these lifts and the athletes that follow these sports are just as big as powerlifters. So why are we all obsessed with power building instead? You could tell me that it's because it's what makes the most sense. Again, you would need to explain that to me. You could also say that weight building or strong building sounds stupid. In my opinion, it doesn't sound more stupid than power building, because if you look at the semantics, power building, so you're building power, so you're a powerlifter. Where is the bodybuilding in this? You see where I'm getting at here? I think that the entirety of power building hinges on the fact that people never actually stop for a second to question what they're doing in the gym. But there is actually one argument that would be receivable, and that is to say that taking powerlifting as the strength component for power building is smart because the powerlifting lifts are the best at hypertrophy. And I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that. I think you can make the case that doing something like a bench press is going to make you bigger than a clean and jerk, right? Some people would say it's not true, but for the sake of the argument, we're going to pretend that it is. We're going to pretend that the big three is superior in terms of hypertrophy. Okay, if that is the case, can you still say that this is true if we compare the big three with bodybuilding lifts? So if I take, for example, a bench press, can you make the case that a bench press is superior to a push-up or to a dip? Can you make the case that a deadlift is superior to a Romanian deadlift or that a squat is superior to a hack squat? I think if you're honest with yourself and you're actually trying to be objective, you'll realize that not only is it impossible, but if you apply your mind, you'll find that the lifts that I cited are better for hypertrophy because every single parameter is improved. Better fatigue to stimulus ratio, better range of motion, less tendon strain, less overall fatigue on the CNS, all things that make a lift better for hypertrophy. So objectively, if you follow Powerbuilding and you center the entirety of your lifting regimen and of your method around these three movements, well, you are centering the program around movements which are objectively, again, subpar for hypertrophy. And something that I think demonstrates that quite well is the fact that you have more and more bodybuilders who are moving away from these movements. You've seen these videos of people who tell you, oh, I stopped benching and my chest blew up. I stopped squatting and my quads blew up. I gave up deadlifting. Deadlifting is bad. Sometimes these videos and these influencers take it too far, but the message is quite simple. The big three is overrated. Barbell movements are overrated. And I agree. They're overrated in the sense that we live in a powerlifting-centric environment and you are told that these things are the best, but no one can explain to you how. And then when you look at the parameters of the lift, you realize that actually they're not the best, they are subpar. There are better choices out there. And I think that it's a good thing that we're moving away from the big three mindset because more and more novices are going to train and develop the ability to get stronger at a ton of different lifts that won't be the bench squat and deadlift, and we'll see much better physiques as a result of that, if only because not everyone is suited for the bench squat and deadlift, which is something that Powerbuilding ignores entirely because it forces everyone to do these movements, since these, again, are the components and the core aspect of that methodology. So that's already a big issue. If you're Powerbuilding, you don't have a choice, you have to do these movements because it's in the name, it's Powerbuilding. And you know, this is a perfect example of how an arbitrary choice ends up becoming the justification for subpar lifting methods. Because the mindset behind Powerbuilding and the people who stick to these lifts, even though they're not that great, is this. I do these lifts because I have to, and I have to because I'm Powerbuilding. Did these people ever stop for a second and ask themselves why? Because most people who powerbuild don't compete. So why are you sticking to these movements? You're never even tested on them. You don't compete using them. You use them as a way to grow bigger muscles. And I just proved to you that you could get better results without these movements. So why are you still doing them? Well, again, because of what I just explained, you're following something arbitrary and you've stopped questioning the methods that you're using, meaning that the results you're going to get are most likely going to be subpar as well. But it doesn't stop there. Not only are power builders doing subpar movements, they also usually use subpar technique. Because yes, you're going to do the big three. Why? To get as strong as possible using them. And how do you move as much weight as possible on any given lift? Well, you find the leverage that is giving you the best advantage and therefore reduces range of motion and allows the weight to move. And usually, these techniques and these powerlifting forms also happen to be the ones that are far removed from hypertrophy. Because the way to move the most amount of weight is not the way to move the most amount, to grow, the most amount of muscle. Case in point, bench press. How do you grow the most on bench press? You find a way to get as much range of motion as possible with a slow tempo. But that's not how powerlifters bench at all. They do the exact opposite. They find a way to have the shortest range of motion and to be as explosive as possible. Same with the squat and the low bar, same with the deadlift and sumo deadlift. Why does sumo deadlift exist? Because it allows you to move much more weight with a small range of motion, which also means that most likely, if you have the choice between a Romanian deadlift and a sumo deadlift, you would grow much more using the Romanian deadlift. But you won't be doing that because you're doing power building, so you'll stick with these three movements and you'll do them in a way that will not get you hypertrophic results. And it doesn't end there, because there's also the fact that not only are the movements and the methods you apply to the movements subpar, but even the training methodology that are going to be applied to these movements is going to be subpar, because you're going to train for strength. And what type of strength? 1 rep max strength. And any powerlifter will tell you that 1 rep max strength is extremely specific, it is a skill, and it's to be trained and developed, and it becomes the core of your training. If you want to properly apply a 1 rep max approach and develop your strength in that aspect, you're going to have to make your entire training revolve around it. So now you've injected something in the program that skews the entirety of the routine, and that also becomes the most mentally and physically taxing aspect of the program. So you would be a fool not to hyper-focus on it. But if you hyper-focus on it, and we'll talk about it later, the rest of the program will suffer because your energy is going to be directed somewhere else. But you don't really have a choice, because if you just half-ass it, you'll never grow your 1 rep max. So you have, at some point or the other, to decide what your priority is. And if your goal is to be as good as possible at the big 3, you'll find that your priority must become the big 3. This video is not a diss on powerlifting, right? It's a diss on power building. I respect powerlifters, but you'll notice that powerlifters obsess over the big 3 for a reason. They've mastered the method, they've mastered the way to get as strong as possible on these movements, and the way is to focus on them. So it would only really be natural that someone who trains for size is not going to follow in their footsteps, and yet power builders do. So what happens? Well, you see 2 results. Either you'll have a guy who is going to become what I call a max out bro. So he'll max out once in a while with no methodology and no real idea of what he's doing, and he's never really going to get that strong. And sadly, a lot of people are like this. People who max out and they don't have a method, they don't peak, they don't have recovery periods, they don't deload, and then they wonder why they never get stronger. Or, for what I explained previously, you'll just become a powerlifter, but not any powerlifter. You will become a powerlifter who does curls. And I think it's an appellation and a categorization that is, I think, perfect, because it's what I see times and times again. I see people who are self-described power builders and who train like this. They lift for strength using compound movements that they take extremely seriously, and then they chase the pump using isolations. I cannot tell you the amount of times I've heard this chase the pump thing and how much it pisses me off, because it devalues bodybuilding training. If you just chase the pump using a lift, guess what? You're not training that lift seriously, and so the results you'll get are not going to be remarkable at all. Imagine if you met a guy and he told you, oh yeah, I want to get as strong as possible on the squat, and so to do that, I squat once a week and I do random bullshit. Any powerlifter would try and they would look at the guy and think, okay, any object in the room heavy enough that I can throw at your face, I will, because you're making a joke and a mockery out of my sport. Same exact thing for people who chase the pump. Because if you chase the pump, clearly your phrasing is that your priority is the big 3, that's what matters, and the rest is just accessories, meaning that it's not important. So because it's not important, you're going to put all of your effort in the main lift, and then while you'll do isolation, you'll just do half-assed sets. You won't go to failure, and you won't even use a weight that is relevant. I couldn't tell you the amount of times I've seen that. People who kill themselves on squat, deadlift, and bench, then they do 3 sets of curls, they pick like 25 pounds, they don't know why, they just selected random dumbbells, they do 15 reps, they don't even think about it twice, they're not even into it, it's not intense at all, then they drop it and they're like, okay, done. Done? You expect to see results from that? Of course you won't see results from it, but it's logical, It's the methodology that's bad. It's the methodology that dictates that because your mind is not in it. Now apply this same horror, this same abomination to every other isolation movement, and you understand why so many people who power build have spider mode physiques. It's because if you treat your limbs, if you treat your core and your real delts and your lats as an accessory, they will look like an accessory on your physique. An accessory on a woman that dresses up is like a small bag that you don't even notice. What is the main piece? It's the dress. You want big biceps? Treat your curls like your dresses. Treat your curls like the main piece. And that is how you grow. But power building is directly opposed to this idea because you have to make a choice, and the choice is going to always be the compound movement. So oftentimes, power builders will just straight up skip movements, skip muscle groups sometimes, and they'll justify it by saying, oh, well, there is no carryover to my main lifts. Okay, well then you're not a power builder, you're a powerlifter. If a powerlifter told me, oh yeah, I'm not training forearms because it's not useful for my sport, I'd be like, okay, makes sense. But if you're power building, so you're doing half bodybuilding, then you have no excuse to not isolate every single muscle in your body. So this is why I say that people who are power building are really only powerlifters who do curls. It's because this is a better appellation and definition for them. And it also applies to the strategies that go with the rep ranges that we select in our training. Because this entire idea of power building has given birth to the notion, an arbitrary notion and separation in people's mind, that compounds should be always low reps and are always for strength, and isolation in high reps is for hypertrophy. And this is why I have a bone to pick with power building, because it hurts bodybuilding. Because now you'll have people who want to bodybuild, want to be better and get better, and they'll follow this nonsense because it is nonsense. This notion that low reps don't work for muscle growth, that's not true. The hypertrophy rep range is contained between the 3 to 15 rep bracket. That's the one that I've picked. Some people will go further and say 20 reps is good. I personally think that 3 to 15 is your sweet spot. That's where most of your rep ranges should be. And as a bodybuilder, yes, this means that sometimes you'll do a 3 to 5. You'll do a 5 to 7, a 5 to 8. All of that is valid. But some people will hear what power builders have to say and think, okay, low reps compounds is for strength, so for size, it's only isolation and high reps. And then we wonder why so many naturals are small and unimpressive. It's because they've bought into this separation, and so a subpar training method named power building gives birth to subpar training methods. This is why I insist so much on ideological purity and methodological purity when we talk about training. Because if we refuse to create these distinctions in people's mind, it gives birth to these separations that then lead people to follow methods that simply do not work. The only real difference that exists between those rep ranges and between your selection is going to be training intensity, so how much intensity you want to put in a lift, and volume accumulation. And that's it. Outside of that, the rest is nonsense. The hypertrophy rep range is non-existent. And I think that the same applies between strength training and size training. You'll find many videos will tell you, oh, this is how you train for size, this is how you train for strength. Every single time, they focus on what? The rep range. They focus on what? The intensity, even though I just proved to you that all of that is irrelevant because bodybuilders should also be training intensely. They should also use compound movements. So instead, this is how I want you to think about this. The only difference between training for strength and training for size is your focus, and that is it. It's what you want to do. So if for you strength is the end, then you're training for strength. And if for you strength is a mean to an end, then you are training for size. It's as simple as that. Why do I say this? Because bodybuilders and proper bodybuilding training also focuses on strength. But it focuses on strength in a different way as a mean to push progression, as a mean to accumulate volume within a relevant intensity window so as to be able to keep challenging the muscle. It's as simple as that. So when I tell you that I don't care about strength, what I mean is I have no love in my heart for strength. It doesn't excite me to hit a PR, but does it mean that I just don't take into account the weight on the bar, that I just stack plates randomly, that when I do curls, I pick random dumbbells. No, I know exactly the weight I need, and I'm going to make damn sure that I increase that weight session after session, or that I get a rep PR. Why? Because this is the type of strength focus and performance focus needed for my sport, which is bodybuilding and hypertrophy. It starts and ends there. And you might be someone who loves strength, and there's no issue with that. It's absolutely possible to love strength and also train for bodybuilding, as long as you follow methods that also align with bodybuilding, which powerbuilding fails to do. So a bodybuilder, regardless of his focus and his love, will try to get stronger on a wide variety of movements using a wide variety of rep ranges. Knowing this, we can very easily fix powerbuilding. Because as I said at the start, there's not really a problem with powerbuilding as a practice, there's a problem with the method. So in 3 simple steps, we can solve all of these issues. Step number 1, don't focus on the big 3. There's nothing special about the big 3, they're just random lifts. I know it hurts, but the bench press is just an horizontal press. It was selected arbitrarily by powerlifting standards because it is easiest to judge. The dips is hard to judge because of range of motion and camera angle, so they picked the bench. Why would you focus an arbitrary decision from a sport you don't even practice? It's idiotic. Pick movements that align with your needs, your body, and what you like to do in the gym. Step number 2, don't train for 1 rep max strength. It's way too taxing both mentally and physically. It's a skill that takes time, and any powerlifting coach will tell you that. So just don't do it. There is no point. It doesn't mean that you cannot go low reps, but every time you max out, you take away from your ability to build muscle. It's as simple as that. And then the third and last step is train every muscle, do not skip them. By treating every movement seriously, your curls are just as important as your squats, and taking everything to or close to failure. If you do that, if you progressively overload, and if you look at what you're doing with these lifts, you will grow. There is no way around that. Actually, the only reason why powerbuilding fails at this is because it doesn't apply the same seriousness it does with its compound movement. But if you want to bodybuild, this is how you should go about it. There's only one problem with the advice I just gave you, and I think you have come to realize the problem at this point, is that if you do all of the things I just told you and you apply them to powerbuilding, you won't really be powerbuilding anymore. You'll be bodybuilding, because everything I just described is called bodybuilding. And we only forgot about that because of pro bodybuilders who train like complete fucking morons. But understand that the method I just described is the way the silver era bodybuilders trained and the bronze era bodybuilders trained. They all followed that. They all trained multiple rep ranges, every single muscle, and yes, they were strong as fuck. That's a thing. General strength can be applied within bodybuilding as long as the parameters are respected. So this entire separation, this entire arbitrary decision to create these pockets is the reason why powerbuilding even was birthed to start with, because people bought into their mind that to be a bodybuilder is to be weak, is to only train with machine and high reps. That is not true. Once that myth is dead, the real bodybuilding can re-emerge, and guess what? Good physiques as well, because this is how you build a good physique. And I think that it's also fucking time that you guys who bodybuild stop lying to yourself and stop being ashamed. Stop calling yourself power builders when deep down you fucking know you're a bodybuilder. I understand that the stigma is heavy, that we have to carry it because of drug use and of people who don't know how to train. But guess what? If we want to take back bodybuilding, we have to be honest with ourselves and we have to stop being ashamed. There is no shame in bodybuilding. Bodybuilding as a method, as a sport, as a lifestyle is beautiful, and we must reclaim it. And that is going to be that for this video. Let me know in the comments what you thought. Let me know what you think of the audio. I'm a bad judge of the audio because my ears don't really work anymore, even though I'm only in my early 30s. That is quite sad. And if you've enjoyed the video, if you want to see more, you can always support the channel by clicking the first link in the description. It is my coffee page. You can pledge, you can donate. Anything is appreciated. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.